AI has certainly been in the news for the last 2 years. I think almost so much so that RPA has become a little bit of a stepchild.
Could you please share a real world example how AI has successfully transformed a specific business process?
You don't have to be a data scientist to use the benefits of AI.
People working into RPA space, how they can gradually shift towards AI.
As technologists and good engineers and passionate engineers, we're always excited about technology and what it can do. But technology by itself is almost meaningless.
Could you be able to suggest something to a RPA developer so that they can transition to an AI role or something?
All of a sudden you see vendors like Microsoft, Salesforce, SAP, and several others jumping on that bandwagon. Starting from a technology point of view, I think is a sure way to failure.
Hey guys, welcome back to another exciting episode of RPA Feeds podcast. Today I have a very special guest who is from AI domain. He has like 23 years of experience working into this field. He was associated with SAP. He was a VP there, and now he has started Intelligence Briefing, a solopreneurship journey where he's consulting companies, organizations into AI and how to lead AI-based initiatives. He's an author, also creating LinkedIn learning courses. He's very active in the AI space. We have a lot to talk about it. So stay tuned for that. And I will hand it over to Andreas for his introduction. Welcome to the podcast and glad to have you.
Awesome, Dipendra. Thank you so much for having me. And for those of you watching this, thank you for your interest in this topic. AI has certainly been in the news for the last 2 years. I think almost so much so that RPA has become a little bit of a stepchild, but I don't think that's for long. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with you today about how also RPA is going to evolve and automation is going to evolve in this time of more AI and more AI capability.
Could you please take us through your journey, your experience, how you started?
So early on in my career, I was part of an IT team and IT organization, and I did a lot of operating system migrations and installations and automating these things and software deployment. And something that always interested me was how can we conceive this as something that scales, right? How can we build and test this in a way that's robust, that it scales to hundreds and thousands of machines, so that if somebody at the other end of the world receives this update, receives that software, that it actually works, right? That they don't need to call first level or second level support and complain that something that's working. So I made a lot of good and a lot of tough experiences there early on in my career. Seeing now automation and AI as the next step in how can we actually scale these things, these capabilities to our end users, to our business. That's what keeps driving me and why I'm so excited about this opportunity. I spent a good amount of time working with large Fortune 500 companies here in North America when I was working for SAP. Early on in that cycle of what is machine learning, what is RPA, why should you use this, how is it different from traditional programming? And just seeing that interest in this topic by business leaders, by technology leaders, and wanting to understand how can I use this in my business, I think is immensely powerful because we have all of these tools available in our toolbox. But the question often is, what tool do I actually need to solve this problem? And it's not always AI. I think that's the big point I want to get across. There are so many other things from either rules or automation that can do the job even better in many cases than AI.
That's true. The kind of shift it is happening in this industry and the kind of disruption it is creating, right, in every area, and specifically around automation, RPA. Your expertise in AI, could you please share a real world example how AI has successfully transformed a specific business process?
So I spent a good amount of time working with a large biopharma company here in the US, and their question was, how can we improve our finance processes, specifically accounts receivable? So we get a lot of payments on any given day. We have a lot of open invoices, but how can we match them together? And, certainly RPA can help with certain things, downloading the invoice, extracting information from it, really doing that matching. And again, that goes back to like 2018, 19, the machine learning hype cycle. How can we actually use this technology to do that automatically? And one of the great ways how this company together with us at the time realized that was bringing in their finance experts very early on in the process. Be transparent about why are we doing this? What is the benefit to the business and to you, right? Business, certainly we can automate a lot more things, but to you no longer need to do those matches. You don't you don't need to figure out these things every morning by hand. You can actually talk to the customer and figure out, well, why are they short paying or late payments? How can we optimize our cash management and receivable cycles and so on, and be transparent and be sincere. So if you're in an automation role, I think the opportunity now also with generative AI is that you don't have to be a data scientist to use the benefits of AI. In many cases, it's an API that you can connect to and you send your document to and you get the response back. Or even just the other day, if you see the early glimpses of where things are going with Anthropic's announcements, where generative AI tools are able to interact with the UI, I think this is where the future is going to be and how things are moving. But at the same time, I don't see RPA going away anytime soon, because the reality that all of us know in business is integration is hard. Business have many different products, many different solutions. Not all of them have an API. So you need to connect to the UI to get things done. And again, combining your traditional automation of repeatable steps in a process, now adding more of that uncertainty and figuring that out with generative AI, I think that's where the real strength comes in.
That is really a good insight. And also, whatever product we create, a generic product cannot meet all the needs. There are gaps. There are some gray areas which we need to custom build on, either using some other technologies. And RPA, basically, it's a doer. Still, it is a doer. AI can be a decision maker, can invoke like agents, and everywhere AI agents and agentic AI or what you call APA, agentic process automation. All these terms are getting coined and being talked about, and also some POCs are done. A lot of is happening there. The tools and the platforms have seen that journey, and they are matured now to do certain automations. So it would be a combination of these two technologies. That's what I think, and it was your opinion as well, and that's how you also see as a leader in this space. So thank you for those insights. Moving on to the next question: what are some of the key challenges that companies face while implementing AI, especially in the industries that are still adopting to automation?
So I think there are several, but many of those challenges are actually common across different industries. I see a lot of times leaders are chasing that shiny object, AI, right? We need to figure out what we do with AI. It's the new thing. I see it in the tech news everywhere. All my vendors are telling me they're doing something with AI, but what does it actually mean for us and for our business? Where should we actually start? So starting from a technology point of view, I think is a sure way to failure. As technologists and good engineers and passionate engineers, we're always excited about technology and what it can do. But technology by itself is almost meaningless, right? It's definitely meaningless to the business unless we're using it to make a real impact. So the question becomes, right. Exactly. That's the question. What is the problem that we're actually trying to solve? And then what is the right technology to solve that problem with? If you change that point of view from technology-led to actually business-led, that's usually the best starting point to begin with. And actually, I've talked to more than 60 leaders on my podcast, What's the Buzz, and summarized it in the AI Leadership Handbook, what they have shared as well. And it's really a lot about change management. People, building trust, understanding what is the business problem that they're trying to solve, and then coming to technology as an enabler to doing that.
True. And I also keep on getting a lot of these questions, like people working into RPA space, how they can gradually shift towards AI. So using AI is not a challenge these days, because as you said, everything is exposed via an API. It's just a REST call. So in a way, we are already using API in certain ways for some of the processes. But the challenge is everybody wants to upskill into AI, and AI being a very big topic and it's a large umbrella. I mean, what is the path? Would you be able to suggest something to a RPA developer so that they can transition to an AI role or something like that?
So one of the great things, with this hype cycle around generative AI is that the technology is definitely becoming a lot more accessible. Right? You have an internet connection and a browser, and you can use many of these tools already for free. So learning about these tools and methods and technologies, I think, has become a lot easier. I mean, there's an abundance of content, right? Like our podcast is as well, covering different angles where, you as an RPA developer can learn about what is actually happening, where are things moving. It's getting a lot easier to try out these capabilities as well. So I think keeping an eye on what are the vendors actually implementing and adding in terms of features to their products, right? If you specialize on UiPath, just coming out of Forward the last couple of days, there were some great announcements. If you specialize on any of the other tools, keep an eye on what are those vendors putting out there in the market and see how you can experiment with those things, right? Maybe for one of your next projects, can you suggest, hey, can we use more AI? Or if we use more more AI, it looks like we are getting better rates of or better hit rates, or we can extract information with a higher level of confidence, or in many more languages. We don't need as many examples of documents. So I think looking for the vendors, what they're putting out there, definitely staying close to content on YouTube and experts sharing concrete tutorials there, but then also seeing how you can implement it in a project. I think those are the 3 steps that I would recommend to stay on top of where are things actually going and how can you make them useful.
Thank you so much for sharing your recommendation. I think it would really help. And people watching us on this podcast, Andreas has recently published a book which is known as AI Handbook. You can also try that out. I will mention a link in the description. So that's the book with a blue color logo and a button which he uses in a lot on his podcast shows. So you can also watch his podcast shows to get the insights from the industry leader and what's happening in this space. I'll mention both the links in the description. Moving on to the next question. What are some of the governance practices that businesses should adopt to avoid bias and ensure that responsible use of AI?
That's a pretty big question, right? And a pretty big topic. It's really, really important on many different fronts. I think we first of all need to realize that AI and generative AI does inherit many of the biases that we hold individually or even collectively as teams, as groups, organizations, or societies. So the question becomes, how can we test for those biases? How can we give these models instructions? How can we prompt an LLM such that it does not generate biased output, or that the bias is really, really minimized? I think there are a lot of good frameworks out there to test some of these things as well. Also, when it comes to security, what are you able to actually input? What is it able to output? There are a lot of good frameworks out there to test these things. I think in many organizations, this part around ethics, first of all, starts with awareness that these models are not perfect, that they do inherit some biases. And let's also be honest and frank, right? A lot of times these are Western US based biases, because if you look at the corpus, the language that has been fed into these models, it's predominantly English, but also again of a certain culture in a certain region. So that kind of awareness, I think, already helps. Bias can take different forms, right? It can be gender bias when it comes to professions. There's some well documented examples where somebody says the doctor yelled at the nurse because he was late. Who was late? And the model says the doctor, right? So implying that the doctor is a man. We also know that there are female doctors. Right? Maybe statistically there are more male doctors than female doctors, and that's where some of those biases come in. But knowing that we can observe some of these things and need to be observant of them as developers, I think is already critically important.
Thanks for those insights. Yeah, it's a pretty vast topic. We will plan something maybe separate on that. Moving on to the next. So there is a lot of hype around agentic process automation, agentic AI, AI agents. So these are some of the terms which are getting coined and really hot. So what is your view, like how this would be incorporated into RPA point of view? How soon it is going to be available and we can make use of it, or it's all conceptual and very early stages right now? So what are your thoughts?
So what I'm seeing is that the space is evolving super, super fast. Right? Thinking back of last year, the spring of 2023, we saw the first agent type frameworks, Baby AGI, Auto GPT, I think was the other one. And people started playing around with them and experimenting. Said, hey, actually, we can use these large language models to not only understand what somebody is saying, but what do they actually mean? What do I need to do next? Right? Analyze steps and also start executing them. Whenever there's an API, we can create some code and the agent can run this. And while it seemed like a good idea and a good research project, all of a sudden you see vendors like Microsoft, Salesforce, SAP, and several others jumping on that bandwagon and realizing that, hey, here's a real opportunity on one hand, right? And on the other, there's also a threat that if we don't do that, others are going to do that and they're going to disintermediate us. But speaking from that opportunity, right? In business, there are again still so many tasks that even we're not able to solve with RPA, because while they are repeatable, there's still a lot of uncertainty and a lot of variance in that process, right? What is the data you're getting back? What exactly is your customer asking in a customer service scenario? Where do you find the information? What's the right information to even propose back? So with agents that can accept a goal that the user or that the developer has defined, they can break that goal down into smaller sub-steps. They can work on these sub-steps and come back and aggregate their response. a person can review it, should actually review it, at least at the moment, before that response is, for example, showed back to the customer asking about that product, asking about the manual for that product, or filing a case or a complaint. So looking at it from this point of agents, I think they will hit a certain limitation, again, once they need to interact with a system that does not have an API, your legacy system. Once it needs to interact with a system that's not from the same vendor. They might be, agents might be really, really good in solving problems within a certain software, within a certain application. They might do that really well for a customer experience, for your CRM. But once you want that agent to talk to your finance application and they're not from the same vendor, it's probably going to be difficult unless somebody comes up with a good and robust integration. So in many cases, I expect, at least in the short term, we'll see UI level integration again. And I think that's where we need RPA and where that comes back. At some point in that process, there are repeatable and very well-defined steps. We use RPA to do that, right? Maybe it's download the PDF from your vendor portal and store it somewhere temporarily, and then the agent continues and ingests the document and reads out the information and processes it. But I think that the two actually need each other, RPA and agentic workflows and agentic process automation.
So it wouldn't be wrong to say that you can orchestrate things. You can still be on one platform and use that platform. Like you can use AI agents, you can use RPA, you can use no matter what technology, and you can orchestrate it from a single source so that you can build that automation and get things done.
I believe so, right? I think at some point there has to be interoperability between the different platforms and between the different solutions. And I think it's a matter of what is your starting point, right? If you start from an RPA solution, how can you add more agentic capabilities to it? On the other hand, if you start from an agentic platform, how can you add RPA and do the more repeatable things?
Sure. So every other platform vendor are trying to build their own AI. Like Salesforce has this Agent Force, and then all the RPA platforms like UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Microsoft, everybody is trying to come up with their version of AI or in some or other way to help developers. So ultimately, it would like every vendor would try to use these features and incorporate them into their platform.
Yeah, I think so, right? On one hand, it strengthens the value proposition of that platform and helps also grow the value to the developer community. You don't need a separate tool to do this. You can build this here, or you can do things on our platform that you cannot do on others, right? In anything that creates that tighter integration. See, I was reading Gartner's IT spend forecast for next year. And one of the key things that was mentioned there is that, yes, spending is going to increase by a little over 9%, mainly driven by things like generative AI. But CIOs will also quickly realize that it's not that easy. It's not that simple. They will have more muted expectations because data is still needed. And that data is not necessarily at the level of quality or in the shape that organizations need it to make it useful for agentic workflows as well.
That's true. Thanks for your insights. And moving on to the rapid fire section quickly, and I will ask you a few of the questions and I expect you to answer within 5 seconds. So are you ready for that?
I am ready.
So most adventurous thing you have ever done?
Most adventurous thing, food comes to mind. I was in Singapore many years ago, and one of my local colleagues introduced me to some of the local foods. For example, durian. So durian is a fruit that is not very well known in the western part, and definitely not in the US or in Germany, where I'm originally from. And just that smell and that taste was something new. I actually like it a lot, and I hope that I can go back to Singapore soon again, or to other places where there's durian. But for a Westerner, it was pretty adventurous.
Super. What's your favorite AI use case?
So personally, I've been experimenting quite a bit with Microsoft's AutoGen agentic framework and seeing just how agents can interact with each other and how they can exchange information and build on top of each other's responses. I think is super exciting, and just seeing that this will most likely be what we'll see more of in the future in business. Virtual teams of agents working together, I think is super exciting.
Okay. Biggest challenge that you see for AI in the next decade?
There are a few. One is misinformation and disinformation. It's getting a lot harder to discern if information that we're seeing on the web is actually accurate and true. And I think at the moment, the mechanisms and methods to either watermark or somehow test if something is real, is true, or has been AI generated, or is a complete falsehood, I think they're not there yet. So in the next couple of years, I think that's a big risk. I think the second part is the cost of bad and incorrect decisions, right? As we're unleashing more and more of those AI capabilities into business and into the world, what is the actual effect that these capabilities have, knowing that they have some downsides?
Okay. Which AI tool or platform you can't live without?
Good question. One of the ones that I like using a lot is actually Midjourney for image generation. Trying out different styles, different prompts, experimenting with that. I use it to generate images for my weekly newsletter, to get to use the tool and become more familiar and try out different things. That's one of the tools I can't live without, and I think it's one of the best image generators out there at the moment.
Will AI replace human?
No. Clear no. Hopefully no, right? So it's on us to make sure that it doesn't. I think AI augments humans in many, many different ways. I think that's where the exciting part actually is, finding out what are those areas where it can augment what we do, where it can be a helper, a co-pilot, a co-intelligence, whatever you want to call it. And, making sure that you do that in a way that that is ethical, that brings people along and that supports us.
Yeah. True. And that was the case when RPA was also pitched in. I mean, it was in early stages, like it will eat up the jobs of all the knowledge workers or the desk jobs, basically. So
it hasn't quite happened yet, right?
Yeah, it has.
So
that's
reassuring. The transformation, I think, is actually a great point. I think it's more of a transformation than a replacement, which is good news.
Cool. That's with that we come to an end on this rapid fire section. I have a follow-up question for you. How do you envision the role of AI evolving the workforce?
So I think today we use AI, or many organizations start using AI for small use cases, productivity gains, right? If your organization provides access to Microsoft Copilot, that would be one example, or individuals using ChatGPT or Claude or other tools to, write emails, draft some other things, draft a response, use it for data analysis. In many cases, individual productivity use cases, which is great, right? We get to use these tools, we get more familiar with how do we actually use them, how do we get some good output. I think it'll evolve to, more of this autonomy. I don't think it's full autonomy quite yet, but being able to delegate more tasks to an AI that can handle these tasks under uncertainty a lot better than our strict and rigid rules or if then else type programming is able to handle it. And I think as a next step, again, it's going more towards increasing levels of autonomy, maybe full autonomy to some extent, and agents communicating with each other to optimize the supply chain, to optimize supply and demand, organize the best materials at the lowest price for you and give you a recommendation, give you a proposal. So I think from, again, us using them more as a productivity enhancement to us delegating more to it, to them actually prompting us and saying, hey, I found some discrepancies here. I think here are 3 options. You should go with number 1 if you want to achieve these and those goals. Do you want to move forward with those? I think that's how we're going to see it evolve. But no matter how fast that happens or to what degree you're comfortable, your company is comfortable in doing that, I think there are a couple of things that are universal. And, again, I'll hold this up one more time. So they're in the AI Leadership Handbook that you can get on Amazon globally. And that is, what is the business problem we're trying to solve? Is RPA, AI, Agentic AI the right tool to solve it? How do we actually create a community and a culture where innovation happens, where, the finance team, the procurement team knows enough about these tools that they are excited to use them and that they can also come back to us with use cases and say, well, in my line of work, every day I see this problem. It's really annoying. Now that I know more about how AI works and again, how automation works, can we actually try to fix this together? I think that's really, really powerful, all the way to things like ethics, responsibility, data privacy, and most of all, also security that we should not neglect as we do that.
Sure. Thank you. It really helps. Moving to the next question, what advice would you give to the industries that are slow to embrace AI and how they can start seeing tangible benefits?
In many cases, there's a good reason why industries are slower on the adoption. Right? Many regulated industries face that same challenge where the question is, yes, we need to do something, but if we do it too fast, we might run into issues where it's unproven or where it has negative side effects. I think at a minimum, in a lab, in a controlled environment, give access to your team members to these tools, to learn about them, to see how they can be useful, to what extent they can be useful, what policies and guidelines you might need to have in place for your organization, for your teams to use these tools in a way that is compliant and that does not put your company or your data at risk. but most of all, get started, right? Everybody else is doing something with it. And even if you know that your industry is typically slow to adopt these innovations, you need to find a way to incorporate it in people's daily work so that they become more comfortable with it and you can achieve more benefits for the business.
That's really good advice. And what is your view on Claude's latest release, like computer use feature?
I think it's a very promising idea and a good glimpse at where things are going. From the coverage that I've seen, it certainly has some limitations, right? It was demoed in a very controlled environment. It did some things well. There were some others that didn't go so well. But I don't think I think the point isn't so much if it's ready for prime time or not. I think the point is we're seeing right here where things are moving. All of a sudden, these large language models no longer just understand language, right? They become multimodal. They also understand voice and video and images, like we have seen already over the last couple of months with GPT-4o. Now, right, the next step is, well, if I understand what's in an image, I can take a screenshot and I can see what's in that screenshot. And what is the data that should be entered here, right? Is it a sales order document or sales order process, basically a UI where I need to enter information? Well, what from that PDF that I have do I need to extract, and how do I put it in the UI? Well, if I can interact with the UI, say through tap or through a tab or through clicking the mouse at the right coordinates, well, then I can enter it again. So I think just seeing that is a possibility that is becoming real is super exciting. It doesn't matter that there are some glitches and some issues in the process today, but give that another 3 months and another 6 months, and I think it'll be very, very real and it'll be here.
Yeah, makes sense. And any advice we would like to give to the industry leaders who are looking to shine in this area, and also to the developer?
So there's an abundance of opportunities, to learn about AI in the context of a certain business function. What does it actually mean there? Where and how can it help? There's an abundance of information of what does, again, AI mean for me as an automation developer? How and where can I use this? Vendors are coming out with new features and capabilities left and right with every conference, every major release. There's some news around AI. It's a matter of staying on top of that information. And again, I can only encourage you to learn about it as much as you can. What is the vendor of my tool of choice actually putting out there? Is it useful for something that we want to do? Can we try this out in a lab? Can we make this available to our organization, incorporate it in something that we're building? But definitely, I think my biggest call to action would be get hands-on, try it out, and see where and how you can use it in production as well.
Super. And for leaders?
Yeah. So for leaders, my call to action is focus on the business side a lot more than you focus on technology. Technology is great. It's evolving rapidly. It makes me dizzy just following all the headlines on any given day. I'm sure you're getting dizzy as well. So rather focus on where are we moving as a company? What are my business stakeholders driving towards? Is it revenue increase? Is it market expansion? Is it cost reduction? And what are some of the levers that we can pull to help increase that revenue, to help further reduce the cost? Are there things in finance, in procurement, in HR where we can help our teams accelerate the process and get better information, get better outcomes? Again, are the vendors that we use coming out with capabilities that meet our needs? Is it a matter of configuring this and just activating this? Do we need another license, another subscription? How much does it cost? Is it worth the cost? These type of considerations, I think, are critical here. You don't need to build everything yourself. You don't need to build everything from scratch. That's why large vendors are embedding things that are common problems across industries. So look for those, but always start with the business problem first and then technology second.
True. Yeah, we should always identify a problem statement first and the problem at hand that we're trying to address, and technology will follow. I mean, there are technologies which you can evaluate, which is cost effective for you, which is within your guardrails and whatnot. You can decide later on that. First, what is the business problem? State your problem statement, find those use cases. That is the main thing. True.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for your time and coming to this show and sharing your insights. It would really be helpful for the audience. And yeah, how has been your experience coming to this podcast?
Yeah, it's wonderful. Look, I've been following your show for quite a while, and I'm excited to see the momentum and the growth that you're building, and the audience being so drawn into what you're sharing and what your guests are sharing. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity to join you today. And I think we've covered a a lot of ground in this episode, from where do you start if you're an RPA developer to make sure you upskill and you participate in this AI revolution, to what do you do if you're a leader, where should you start? And I think that's awesome, because no matter where you are in the organization, there are so many opportunities with AI and because of AI that you can make your own and develop towards. That I think it's an exciting time to be in the technology space and to be a real partner to the business and help them move forward. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for your time. It has been pleasure talking to you, and wish you all the best with your new venture and new stuff that you're doing.
If you're looking for a good guide to get started, check out the AI Leadership Handbook on Amazon.